Shadow Slave. By Guiltythree. Chapter 1189, Battle of the Black Skull 3. It seemed as if the world was ending. Even more than during the battle against the Titanic Horde or in Falcon Scott, it seemed like the world was breaking apart. There had been clashes of similar scale in Antarctica, but at least there was some logic and structure to them. The thunderous roars of the railguns, the orderly formations of mundane soldiers, the power of the awakened, the demented fury of the nightmare creatures, no matter how frenzied a battle was, there was a distinction between the clashing sides, at least. Today, it was just chaos. Thousands of aspects tearing the ground and the sky apart. Awakened, masters, echoes, and enthralled nightmare creatures intertwined in murderous violence. Even the saints were fighting each other, making the world shake with each strike. Somewhere not too far away, Silent Stalker was entangled with Sir Gilead. The monstrous Black Panther had long ago ripped Summer Night's mount apart with her claws, and was now trying to extinguish the valiant saint himself. It was not that easy to do, because he had transformed, as well. Where a handsome knight in resplendent armor had been, there was now an ethereal figure that seemed to be made of pure sunlight. The figure was human-like and of the same height as Sir Gilead, but every time Silent Stalker struck at it, her claws simply passed through the light, not leaving any wounds on Summer Night's shining body. When he lashed out with his sword, however, deep wounds were left on the panther's sable hide. Silent Stalker did not seem to pay them any attention. As they continued to fight, the radiance of the luminous figure was slowly growing bleaker. On another spot of the battlefield, the ground trembled as a giant thunderbird fell from the skies. Sky Tide had withstood the rain of arrows and slaughtered the swarm of winged thralls, but then, it was a wall of invisible force crashed into her. Saint Tyrus rolled on the ground, unable to sustain her transformation anymore, and knelt while grabbing her head. Her beautiful face was pale, and there was a dazed look in her eyes. She glanced at the distant formation of Clan Song, where Beastmaster was hidden, concentrating her incredible power to deliver a terrible mental attack. Then, still kneeling, Sky Tide outstretched her hand and summoned her sword. As she slowly rose to her feet, swaying, a rush of nightmare creatures and enemy ascended was already closing in on her. Somewhere else, 4 reflections were entangled in a strange fight with the wind. The lightning-wreathed thunderbird, a creature that looked like a towering hybrid between a wolf and a human, and a devilishly beautiful woman were launching one attack after another against an invisible opponent. There was a 4th mirror creature, as well, but it was as unseen as their adversary. Whispering Blade alone was pushing back the reflections of Sky Tide, Dire Fong, Beastmaster, and himself. It was impossible to say which side was winning, since the mirror creatures did not express any emotions, and Matic himself could not be seen. However, their clash was far from reaching a conclusion. Some distance away, Saint was fighting against the reflection of Summer Night. She had sent Nightmare away and stood alone against the radiant warrior made of sunlight, her black sword clashing against his shining blade with murderous intent. 2 knights, one ominous and wreathed in darkness, the other resplendent and suffused with warm radiance, were like night and day, and their furious clash instilled fear into the hearts of anyone who witnessed it. Nightmare, meanwhile, had attacked the awakened warriors of Song, but was thwarted by the reflection of Silent Stalker. The black steed was almost caught in the maw of the giant panther, but then, a scrawny figure of dark metal suddenly leaped on the mirror creature's back, grabbing onto it with sharp claws and sinking his irresistible teeth into the beast's hide. The 3 of them turned into a whirlwind of darkness, demolishing anything that got in their way. The battle formation of Clan Valor had cut through the horde of thralls and collided with the awakened of Song. Despite their unnatural unity, it was impossible to maintain the phalanx after that. Soon, the battle inevitably descended into utter mayhem. Awakened fought against awakened, and masters fought against masters. Here and there, some managed to stay close to their cohort, while others were completely isolated and faced the enemy alone. Humans and echoes were thrown together into a disorderly mess of dreadful violence and chilling cruelty. Despite the fact that the warriors of valor wielded swords forged by anvil, which made them far more dangerous than they would have ordinarily been, they were still severely outnumbered. There were plenty of enthralled abominations left on the battlefield, after all. Clan Valor was holding well, for now. But Sunny couldn't see how they could win. In fact, the only reason for the strained equilibrium on the battlefield was Sky Tide. There was no effective counter against her powers among the high-ranking warriors of Clan Song, and so, Beastmaster had to concentrate her fearsome mental attacks on only one person. Now that St. Tyrus had been brought down, however, the enchantress would be free to wreak havoc among the rest of Clan Valor's forces soon. Once that happened, the situation would very likely cascade into a disaster with terrible speed. Apart from Saint, who was immune to mental attacks and mind manipulation, every other combatant on the battlefield would be at risk. Perhaps even Beastmaster was not powerful enough to break the will of a transcendent instantly, but she did not need to, either. Considering how dire the clashes between the transcendents were already, a moment of distraction would be enough to give the enemy a crucial opportunity to deal a fatal strike. She could turn her diabolical powers against the massive awakened, as well, ensuring that the spine of Valor's army was broken. Which meant that Beastmaster had to be stopped. But who could stop her? Every powerful combatant on the side of Valor was tied down. Only the masters were relatively free, or at least could extricate themselves from the melee with relative ease. However, among them, Sunny alone possessed the ability to bypass the mass of song warriors and attack the alluring Saint. Problem was, he was not sure that he would be able to withstand her power. More than that, he simply did not know where she was. Beastmaster was not very strong in a physical clash, so she did not show herself freely. Cutting down an enemy ascended, Sunny jumped back and sucked in a hoarse breath. Damnation. Something had to change. Chapter 1190, Battle of the Black Skull 4. It was growing near, the moment Sunny feared. He did not really care if Valor won or lost. All he cared about was making sure that there were enough awakened left alive in the aftermath of the battle to continue defending the siege capitals across Antarctica until the winter solstice. But for that, he needed Clan Song to be defeated in a swift and decisive fashion. Which didn't seem to be possible anymore. In fact, from what he saw, the most probable result of the battle was the one he had wanted to avoid at all costs: mutual destruction. The forces of Song were going to win, but the closer they came to victory, the more furiously the warriors of Valor would fight. In the end, it was going to be a massacre. Unless Morgan had something planned. But what could it be? Damn it, damn it. Sunny could think of only one way to quickly break the tide of the battle: eliminate Beastmaster. But the alluring Saint was hidden from his sight, and so, he couldn't even attempt to attack her. In the absence of the real target, there was a secondary goal he wanted to achieve. It was not something that his calculating mind had deemed the most beneficial in the current situation, but simply something he desired. Sunny did not want to see St. Tyrus die. So, he was intending to help her. Maybe that would force Beastmaster to keep suppressing Sky Tide without switching to other targets, as well. Currently, Sunny was in the very thick of the furious melee between the two armies. There were swords flashing and blood spilling on all sides, the terrible cacophony of the battle assaulting his ears at the same time as the vile ugliness of it all assaulted his eyes. Numerous aspects were turning the somber Antarctic plain into a feverish nightmare, and the overcast sky was on the verge of unleashing a heavy rain. In front of him, an ascendant of Clan Song easily cut down a valiant awakened of Clan Valor. He had noticed her a long time ago as she moved across the battlefield, leaving a trail of blood and death in her wake. The woman's aspect seemed to do with manipulating blood. A stream of it spiraled around her like a scarlet ribbon, sometimes shooting forward to pierce the heavy armor of her enemies as if it was paper. Their eyes met for a moment, and then, the Ascended lunged into an attack. Sunny was faster. He easily dodged the scarlet ribbon, dashed forward, and deflected her sword. A split second later, the blade of the Sin of Solace passed through the woman's neck. Waist. In the same motion, Sunny battered an abomination's claw to the side, thus saving the life of an awakened soldier, and grabbed the creature by the neck. It shattered in his grip, and before the pale soldier could react, he was already moving past. Not a moment later, the awakened was killed by an enchanted arrow that slid into the visor of his helmet. Waste. There were the remains of a cohort of Song warriors trying to bar his way, 3 of them, all covered in blood and with wild looks on their faces. Shadows rose from the ground, grabbing at their ankles. The Sin of Solace flashed 3 times, and 3 heads rolled down. Such a damned waste. Sunny cut through the battlefield, moving with terrible speed. He killed anyone who could slow him, and evaded everyone else. Nevertheless, the shadow he had sent forward was much faster. It reached St. Tyrus long before he could. Sunny used Shadow Step to appear near Sky Tide instantly, and not a moment too soon. She was completely surrounded by enemies, cutting them down with her sword. Even though Tyrus had been denied her transcendent form, and even though she was continuously withstanding a ruinous mental assault, she was still a saint. Her physical prowess, skill, and judgment were beyond the realm of ordinary humans. However, even she had a limit. Sunny deflected a sword aimed at her back and used the rebound force to spin and deliver a crushing kick to the abdomen of the attacking master. Usually, it would have been stupid to show his back to the enemy, but right now, they were surrounded from all sides. No matter how Sunny turned, he would be exposed. Additionally, such logic only applied to humans who did not have eyes at the back of their heads. He, however, had shadow sense, and could look upon the world through his shadows as well. Sunny did not have blind spots, and he also did not have common weaknesses. He could even fight with his eyes closed, if he wished to, while his skin was hard enough to resist most attacks below a certain level. Which didn't mean that he was invincible, of course. In fact, as soon as he reached St. Tyrus, he was overwhelmed by a sudden feeling of dread. Sunny did not know the reason for it, but it was as though something inconceivably vast and powerful was looking at him, full of inhuman indifference. No, not indifference. Emptiness. In what? What is this feeling? Sunny was distracted for a split second, which gave the enemies an opportunity to launch an attack on him. From below, the ground suddenly shifted and rose, wrapping around his legs, just like the shadows he had used a dozen seconds ago to immobilize the three awakened. At the same time, a javelin made of turbulent wind shot at his head. Sunny cursed, then sent essence into his legs to give them some explosive strength, broke through the bindings, and bent backwards to dodge the javelin. As a result, he avoided the attack, but ended up rolling over his shoulder. When he hit the ground, though, it felt wrong. What the hell? Sunny felt something cold and slithering move across his palm. Looking down, he saw a thin, gray worm crawling across it, with pieces of soil sticking to its translucent body. The sight of it was naturally disgusting, but more than that, it suddenly filled Sunny with fear. He gazed at the spot that he had touched to exit the roll and shivered. The soil was moving, countless worms crawling out of it like flesh maggots. It was not just that small patch of ground, either. All around them, the battlefield seemed to be rippling. The ground was seething like a liquid, full of these thin, gray worms. Suddenly, Sunny felt very cold. His mind froze for a brief moment. It could have been a manifestation of a powerful aspect ability. But the scale of it was too great to come from anyone except for a saint. There were no saints with these kinds of powers on the battlefield, though. His eyes widened. The Titan. Chapter 1191, Battle of the Black Skull 5. The Nightmare Gate leading to the area of the Black Skull Citadel was located within the hunting grounds of a corrupted Titan. Sunny knew that. The Titan itself was a mysterious creature. The evacuation army did not possess a lot of information about it, simply because it was too dangerous of a task to observe the abomination. After losing several teams while trying to investigate the creature, even the elite scouts of the Special Reconnaissance Unit did not dare stalk it. All they knew about the corrupted Titan was that its movement patterns were erratic, that approaching it was suicidal, and that its powers had something to do with reanimating the dead. As long as the creature showed no sign of setting its sights on one of the siege capitals, the army simply monitored its general area of activity and kept away. Army Command had also taken steps to ensure that the corpses of the nightmare creatures slain around the siege capitals were promptly disposed of, to ensure that the Titan wouldn't be able to make use of them. However, the forces of the warring clans had brazenly invaded its territory, and now, they were about to pay the price. Sunny was sure of it. Damnation. Staring at the worm crawling across his palm, he felt time slow down. Instantly, Sunny was overwhelmed by an animalistic, panicked desire to sever his hand before it was too late. He did not know what would happen if he didn't, and was terrified to find out. He was scared. There had been a time when Sunny felt fear often. At some point, however, he had developed a pretty high tolerance to terror, maybe because he had been exposed to it too much. These days, he sometimes felt disturbed, apprehensive, and wary, but very rarely truly afraid. He couldn't help but be afraid now, though. Looking at the gray worm, it was as though Sunny had been transported to a snowy field in the Antarctic center. The feeling of absolute, overwhelming powerlessness he had experienced there. It chilled him to the bone. Curse it. With a snarl, Sunny dissolved into the shadows, allowing the worm to fall to the ground. A split second later, he reappeared a few meters away, holding his sword in a defensive stance. All around, the battlefield was changing. The worms were crawling from the ground and burrowing into the corpses of the fallen awakened and slain nightmare creatures. Moments later, the corpses started to convulse. Some were even rising, moving like broken marionettes. What is this? Oin horrified, Sunny watched as the victims of the bloody battle were being brought back to life. Or rather, to a perverted semblance of life. All kinds of wild thoughts flashed through his mind, from the instinctual desire to flee to the wild idea that it was Ki Song, the Queen of Worms, head personally descending into the waking world. But no, it couldn't be her. It was simply a corrupted terror, it had to be. A creature like that was powerful, but not indestructible. Sky Tide alone had battled the winter beast for weeks. Months, even. If there had been 6 more saints supporting her, the abominable creature would have undoubtedly been slain. There were currently 7 saints present on the battlefield, 6 belonging to the great clans, and Wake of Ruin. There were Sunny, Nephi's, Morgan, Mordred, and Sishan as well. There was no reason for him to. Suddenly, the ground trembled and split. Hundreds of meters away, a gargantuan head rose from below it, the head of a revolting, giant worm. It crawled from the soil as if escaping hell, its long body not really a single hole, but instead a shape created by numerous slithering grey worms sticking together. A visage so ghastly that Sunny suddenly wanted to vomit. However, he didn't. Because there were things only Sunny could see. Even though the giant body of the Titan was not an actual creature, but instead an amalgamation of countless smaller worms, he could see its soul cores. A scattering of radiant embers that continued to reveal themselves as the abominations crawled from underground. 3 were already in view, and 4 more would undoubtedly follow. Sunny felt something move in his chest, and allowed himself to be paralyzed by shock. But only for a second. Embers. Embers. 7 embers. His eyes widened. Sunny was frozen for a moment, and then whispered, "All there is to war is power. And application of power. One has to be flexible when waging war. I have them exactly where I wanted them." That was what Morgan had said. He shivered. Of course. A corrupted Titan would have had 7 soul cores. 7 corrupted soul cores. Its soul would have been permeated with abhorrent darkness stemming from 7 vile nodes. A transcendent Titan, if such a thing existed, would have had 7 radiant spheres of light serving as the nexuses of its vast soul. The creature in front of him, however, had neither nodes of darkness nor radiant cores. Instead, it had 7 bright embers burning within its body. Like a transcendent echo would. And Morgan had summoned 20 of those, already. For some reason, the spell was obsessed with the number 7. And, influenced by the spell, humans had begun to structure various things in 7s, as well. So, wouldn't the Princess of Valor actually possess 21 transcendent echoes? That would be only logical. Finally, several things clicked together in Sunny's mind: the reason for Morgan's unexplainable confidence, her pretense of willingness to participate in a duel that had pushed Beastmaster into committing to a battle, the fact that the corrupted Titan's hunting grounds had shifted to encompass the Black Skull Nightmare Gate right after reinforcements had been sent through it by Whispering Blade. Sunny blinked. What a devious strategy. There wasn't, and had never been, a corrupted Titan. There was only an echo of one, a transcendent echo belonging to Morgan. She had unleashed it in East Antarctica and allowed it to roam free all that time. The Echo had even destroyed several human outposts and killed every scout of the evacuation army sent to investigate it, until no more scouts were sent. All to make this moment possible. The Titan Echo had been supposed to protect the Nightmare Gate and seal access to Black Skull until it was captured by Clan Valor, but Mordred bypassed the worm entirely and made those plans useless. So, Morgan was forced to shift her strategy. Instead of betting on the Black Skull Citadel to carry her to the tomb of Ariel ahead of the competition, she used it as a lure to decimate Clan Song's forces on the battlefield. She had applied her power in a way most flexible, indeed. Looking at the giant grey worm rising from the ground, Sunny suppressed a stifled laugh. What the hell? Am I supposed to be happy to see this revolting thing?